Welcome back to Neuroscience Digest, powered by My BrainWise Coach Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Cole Bastian, and I'm joined by
your other co-host, Phil Dixon.
And we are so excited to be bringing you episode 4 of our Neuroscience Digest, which is where we take what's happened in the last week or so in terms of research in the field of neuroscience, break it down into what makes sense for all of us, and then identify if there's any way that it applies to how we might live our lives in a more brain-wise fashion. And Phil, are you ready as our resident researcher to take us through what's happened over the last week or so?
I absolutely am. And we've got a small topic and then a slightly larger topic. And the small topic is Fobbing. Have you ever come?
I have no idea what that means.
I hadn't until yesterday morning either. So let me read it. I'll read the article to you, at least.
Okay.
The article starts, we all know our phones aren't great for our relationships, but that doesn't stop us reaching for them dozens of times a day. That's how Fobbing, unintentionally snubbing someone in favor of your phone, creeps into everyday relationships. And this article starts talking about what is the impact. And the reason I elected to talk about it this morning is last Friday, some colleagues and I and Kathy have a regular Friday time we go out for dinner. And we were out for dinner and there was a couple that arrived and sat in the table 2 up from us. And they sat down and they ordered their food. They didn't talk. They both pulled their phones out. And I actually didn't see them talk before they left.
Wow.
And it was like, all right, if you're going to go out for dinner with somebody, then, and it was like amazing. And I just couldn't believe it. Kathy and I have been complimented in one of our local restaurants. And when we go, they always turn around and say, we never see you two on our phones. And we go, when we go out for dinner, we don't take them with us. And so I think there's a sort of endemic at the moment this goes on that where we're drifting in to non-social behavior with each other. And this is what the article's all about, is what can you do about it? And this lady professor at University College London says, here's a simple way. And she said, the downside is every time you reach for your phone, tell the other person why you're doing it. And when you've done it, put it down and re-engage. And I think that one simple instruction, because there may be reasons why you need it. It may be that in the past, your phone has been the source of looking up information about a movie while you're discussing, things like that. But envelope what you're going to do and then close it off. And the danger is once you get into that rat hole, mouse hole, whatever you might want to call it, rabbit hole, is that our brains will start to track and look up the thing that they were and then get attracted by something else and distracted. And all of a sudden, 5 minutes have gone and you've basically given a message that whatever you're doing is more important than the relationship with the other person. So here's the simple solution. Hey, I need to use the phone for, give a reason. And then when you finish that reason, put the phone down, disengage. There's also research that basically says if the phone's sitting in front of you, your non-conscious brain, the cognitive part of your non-conscious brain is actually paying attention to it, and you're actually losing cognitive ability. So that's the first part of the conversation. Be careful what you do with your phones. Leave them at home if you're going to go out for a social engagement. You won't die without them.
And I think if you think back to, I don't know, what is it, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, before cell phones were so popular, how did we get a hold of one another?
Yeah.
No one died then. And I remember the days when landlines were the only phones that we had, or the car phone or the brick phone. And then eventually we got our little flip phone, but we didn't have any issues. And I was much younger, obviously, back then. I was a child, but the relationships with people were stronger. We were able to have more conversations. We were able to really focus. It was just a different time, but there were things that about that time, especially when connecting with another human being, that I think should carry forward. And we just have to be more intentional about it in today's era because we have such immediate access to technology.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we might do on a future episode is give people some tools for actually starting off and engaging in conversation. So, for example, it's my understanding that Ralph Waldo Emerson would never say to anybody, "How are you today?" He would say, "What seems clearer now?" It
Right.
goes one level deeper in the conversation. It doesn't allow you to say at the surface level.
Well, and I think the other thing is, especially for all relationships, but in your romantic relationships, we call it turning away when you go and pick up your phone. And it can be unintentional, but also intentional, where you're trying to tell the other person you're uninterested or you're frustrated. And instead of communicating that and being open and vulnerable, you then use this device. And there's actually jealousy that can occur between one spouse and another over the fact that you're giving your phone more attention than you are your spouse. And we've talked about that on a few episodes, but I think it's really important to dial in on. I see it all the time. I can't remember where I was. Joey and I might have been out to dinner also, but everyone has their phones out.
Yeah.
And I told Joey, I said, we're not going to do that. Our phones are going to be put away and we're going to focus our conversation on one another. Now, one time we did pull them out because we were playing a game, and it was a game that was couples trivia. So you actually would ask you, what is your spouse's favorite color or whatever? And you had to see how many of them you could get right. So that was an interesting way to connect, but that was the only reason it was out. And then it went away.
So the bottom line is be cautious, envelope, and then best thing is leave them at home. Amen. There are so many, I can't think of a single reason, unless you're a first responder or a doctor or something like that nowadays. And those were when we used to have things called pagers. So anyway, that's the first topic.
Okay, perfect.
Second topic is the topic of celebrations. Why do we celebrate birthdays, for example?
I'm not sure, because today is my birthday for the BrainWise friends, and you're actually listening to this a couple days after my birthday, but it's November 18th for anyone who's interested. But I'm not exactly sure. And everyone has a different level of celebration too, Phil, which I think is interesting.
Absolutely. But I was looking up the neuroscience of celebrating. Okay. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first question is, why do humans celebrate? This article says, expressions of celebratory behavior hardly seem necessary for survival. Right? So, and so we think of everything as from an evolutionary survival point of view, and yet they are universal. Human beings around the world all celebrate, different reasons, different purposes, different occasions, but we all celebrate. Do other animals celebrate? Great question. And is it specified to local areas in the brain? Is it a generic thing? That was the first article I read. Why do we? It turns out that there are some good advantages. And so the bottom line of it is that when we celebrate with rewarding and good social experiences, there's actually 3 neurochemicals that are released. Dopamine, I think we've talked about dopamine before. There's serotonin and oxytocin. And these all enhance our moods. They encourage social bonding and feelings of happiness, feeling just generally good. That's a pretty good reason for it to evolve that way, more on the reward side. So it may not be avoidance of threat. It may be actually, since increasing dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, anything we do makes us feel happier, and therefore we'll do it again. The other thing that comes up was that during these celebrations, if they're positively received, there's actually an influence between the gut and the brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. And it actually probably improves digestion and may, in fact, reduce stress-related gut issues. It's not just the feeling of happiness, but it actually may have, because of that dual relationship, feeling happy may actually improve what's going on in your gut.
Wow.
So, any initial thoughts?
One, I wouldn't have made the gut and brain connection, which I know we want to talk about that on a future discussion. How is the brain and the gut, how are they the two connected, honestly, and what does it mean for us? But it makes sense. Celebration from a perspective of it also, I think, is a part of someone's love language too. It's how do you demonstrate through gifts that you're giving someone else? It can be words of affirmation. So I think that's also a part of it. And the thing that I find interesting is culturally, or even just within different family dynamics, the level to which someone celebrates is very different. And so they still celebrate. And I'm curious, do they get the same levels of release of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, or is it different levels based off of how much you might celebrate? Because, for example, my family's never been big birthday celebrators. We did a little bit growing up. We would have a couple of birthday parties or whatever, but it was just another day. And ever since I got out of school, I actually worked almost every birthday. I never took it off. Whereas on the flip side, my husband, his family was big birthday celebrators, or bigger than my family was, I guess, by comparison. And it's very important to him to celebrate his birthday, especially milestone birthdays, in a really big way. So it's just interesting. I'm just curious if that's the first question that comes to my mind is there a difference in the level to which you might celebrate?
There probably is. And if we step back a little bit, there's also differences, big cultural differences, in the fact that we're recording this 8 days before Thanksgiving. I mean, Thanksgiving is a wonderful, wonderful holiday here in America, but the rest of the world doesn't know much about Thanksgiving. The rest of the world doesn't know much about July the 4th celebrations. Right. On the other hand, there's a big celebration in France for Bastille Day. There's a big celebration in the UK for St. George's Day and Fireworks Day. So we all have different celebrations, and yet it seems to be something that's not just the celebration between a couple or a family, but a community seems to get a benefit out of actually celebrating.
Right.
I know that there's probably a lot more research out there. I didn't do a huge amount. I did enough to go, happy birthday, Cole. So you're welcome. But there is some interesting research that's been done about what's going on. And let me this is a summary of what's happening. So this is from about a summary of about 20 different articles. And first of all, we get empathy and bonding between us. And that's driven by oxytocin and serotonin. And that part of it is reinforcing trust and emotional well-being, emotional closeness, things like that. And then there's what the articles call it non-verbal attunement. It's getting in line with each other. And it's made by eye contact, touch, tone, facial expressions, and rituals, singing, hugging, dancing together. All of those things actually attune us with each other from an emotional perspective. And then there's what we call symbolic belonging. And that's things like, and that's actually going on in the limbic system. And so why do we have birthday candles and songs? One of the things that it does is it makes us feel that we are seen, we're heard, and we're valued. And so all of those things we've talked about as being necessary to feel self-respect, being part of an in-group, all of those type of things. So it actually turns out to have quite a lot of neuroscience behind it. When you plan your spouse's birthday party or the next Christmas party or something, it's not just what you're doing, it's what's going on in your brain, and those are the brains of the other people at the same time.
Right. And it also is key, and I just thought about this because Joey and I talked about it yesterday a little bit, but the memories that you create during that time, especially if they're really emotional memories in a positive way, you can reflect back on them. And the memories that you create with people are truly, in my opinion, the greatest gift that we can give to one another. Whereas material possessions will certainly go away. We can't take them with us. We can certainly take all of the memories with us as we go along our life journey. And I think that the act of celebrating is intentionally creating positive memories also.
Yep, that's exactly right. And if they are, they get laid down in that way. The other thing is, and there's a lot of research been done on expectation versus fulfillment. And the brain gets almost as much joy out of the expectation of a positive event as it does out of the event itself.
Right. which we are experiencing now because for those who didn't know, we did a timeshare thing where you had to sit there and listen to the 2-hour timeshare a few months ago. We did not buy it, by the way, but we are the benefactors of 3 of their free gifts. So we're now planning 3-day, 2-night getaway, a cruise, and a 7-night, 8-day getaway next year sometime.
Oh.
So the anticipation or expectation of doing that is definitely exciting for us.
And we talked last week about planning for our vacations versus planning for our lives. Enjoy planning the vacation because you will get a reward and a joy out of that in and of itself.
The only thing I would say is it's a little frustrating how they make the free gift very difficult to redeem. So they give it to you, they entice you, but then, okay, this one you have to call here, but then it's only available for these dates and you only can see this far out. And I'm like, okay, so they're enticing you at the free gift, but then you really are working under their terms in order to redeem it. But you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. So we're going to enjoy it nonetheless. And we're going to make it work. But we were looking at it yesterday and it's okay. This is a bit more complex than we thought.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the other thing we can do is we can also, and this is the final part of the celebration, it actually turns out to engage both hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
Because on the what we'll call the emotional resonance and social side of it, the oxytocin, serotonin, rituals, birthdays, increased trust, and all that sort of thing. Ritualized joy, giving gifts, all of those things are very right brain oriented. Left brain, it turns out that planning and sequencing, having to decide what gift to give, which are important traditions and things like that, are very left brain oriented. Structuring things around language and the story are very left brain oriented. Happy birthday, celebrating a 16-year-old birthday, a 18, 21, whatever those things are, they are, again, left brain oriented. So if you like, the good news is there's lots of neurochemicals sloshing around in your brains, but it's equally sloshing around in both sides of the brain.
Very interesting. It's very interesting to think about, which I know we're going to talk about in the future, the left brain, right brain, and take a deeper dive into that. But interesting to know that both sides of our brain, obviously we use our whole brain. We talked about that in our myth busting discussion, but that both are being involved or activated as a part of planning a celebration.
Yeah. So enjoy the planning, enjoy the celebration, and let's hope there's not too much of a hangover.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially for those who partake.
Yes.
Very good. Well, with that is our episode of Neuroscience Digest, powered by My BrainWise Coach, where we dove into a little bit around how, what cell phones or technology is doing to our relationships and how to better connect with those we care about and just with those in general, with those we're coming into contact with. And then we also did a discussion on celebrations and how it can have some really positive impacts for us, both from planning it and experiencing it and creating memories with others. And with that, we hope you have a really wonderful week. Continue to stay tuned to our podcast. We release every Monday on YouTube. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then our Neuroscience Digest on Thursdays. Or if you're listening somewhere else, the digest comes out on Thursday and the regular podcast on Mondays. And with that, stay curious, stay compassionate, and always stay brainwise.